Hey guys, so I'm back. So this time we're talking about a thriller, Hush, by Malcom and Urruela. So I did not consider myself a fan of thrillers, but my friend picked up Urruela's book, Wicked Little Words, which was another collab book when we were at a Polycon. And she was like, it's so good, you have to read it. And I was like, I don't like thrillers. She's like, just read it. I did. It was crazy good. If you haven't read Wicked Little Words, read it because it's a complete and total, like, mind. Yeah. This one is more horror slash thriller. It's good. I gave it a 4 stars on Goodreads. It's not a 5-star. But it was definitely good. It's a quick read. It's an easy read. It's a dark story. It's really dark. And it's something that's pretty timely. It's about a young girl who gets kidnapped and is held in a brothel, in a human sex trafficking ring, which we, like to think of as something that happens in other countries, but it happens here. In the county I live in, there is a coalition against human trafficking for my county. That's not even for the state, that's for my county. So it happens in the United States. And so I like that human trafficking is highlighted in this book and the realities of the trauma for the people who suffer from human trafficking and the prejudices that they face from the public and from their community. So it's a good book. You should read it. It's 300 and some pages. I'm not sure how many pages. So the main character is Orion Darby. So this is your spoilers. Spoilers, because I'm about to tell you about the hook. So the main character is Orion Darby. She lives in Missouri. Her love interest potentially, so her best friend's April Novak, whose brother is Maddox Novak, and Orion and Maddox kind of have this thing. And so finally one day when he's 16 and she's 14, he acts on said thing and kisses her on the porch. And it was her first kiss, and it was like the most perfect kiss ever. And her friend April's like, girl, you better get home because you know how your mom is, because Orion lives in not the best home life. And her parents deal with substance abuse, and they're abusive towards her and her little brother, Adam. And so if she's late getting home, she's going to be grounded, possibly abused. So she's riding her bicycle home when she gets taken. Well, this van like hits her on her bicycle to disorient her, and then takes her in the van. And she is raped by these 2 men that they call Thing 1 and Thing 2. So Thing 1 is heavyset, and Thing 2 is a skinny meth addict. And she's taken to this home and held in this cell that's below the home and used in sex trafficking along with several other women. And she's there for 10 years. And eventually she and 2 of the other girls, which are all that were left, and the one girl, Shelby, is like the newest. So it's her, Jacqueline, and Shelby. Jacqueline's been there for 5 years longer than Orion. So Orion was held for 10 years. Jacqueline was held for 15. Shelby was held for like 2 or 3. Thing 2 likes to, when he's alone, go down and have some private time with the ladies. And so when he does that, they decide that's when they're going to fight back. And so they do. And they kill him and they escape. But that's kind of just the beginning of the story, because the story is really about the trauma that these women suffer and how they try and deal with that trauma. And having worked in psych and substance abuse, I can tell you that this is pretty true to life. What happens to victims of sexual abuse and trauma. They oftentimes turn to substances because they can't deal with their emotions, their memories, their nightmares, So that part of the story is pretty true to life. So apparently they have some money from somebody had set up a GoFundMe. They were getting money from Social Security. They got a lawyer and they got money from the lawyer. And so they're like set, right? And so once they're finally released, the police have them held in a hotel room until they can well, thing one runs off, right? Because he was gone when they killed thing two. So the police officer on the scene at the hospital, not really on the scene, at the hospital is Maddox, the one that she kissed when she was 14 and that she kind of held on to. That was like her little safe place that she kept to herself the whole 10 years that she was in captivity. She did share it with the girls. So that's kind of their thing, is they told each other stories of their life before. And so anyway, so they get some money. Shelby, of course, goes home to her mom and dad because she's a young girl. I think she's like 15, maybe 14, 15, because she starts driving while they're in this story. Jacqueline and Orion, who were the two older women, Jacqueline was the one that was held longer than Orion, get apartments in the same building but on opposite ends so that they can kind of stay connected to one another and check on one another. Jacqueline starts down the road of substances. She starts off with alcohol and marijuana and then moves on to other things under the guise of, well, I just want to try everything I didn't get to try while I was held captive. But the truth is that that's how she's trying to cope, and it's not working very well. And of course, they had access to counselors and psychiatrists and all that, but they didn't, from what it sounds like in the book, they didn't really utilize that help. They did to start with, and then they kind of fell off, which also is true to life, that people will, you know what, I'm going to do it this time. And they go get treatment and they go see the psychiatrist and they go see the counselor, but things happen, life happens, and they fall off the wagon. So they finally catch, well, April, Maddox's sister, her best friend from when she was 14, starts showing up while she's in the hotel. And Orion is trying to push her away because she's like, you know, Rye, which was her nickname, died in those cells. I'm no longer that person. Like, I kind of don't want to have anything to do with anybody. And you can understand that if you spent 10 years being tortured and raped and beaten, and why you wouldn't want to have anything to do with anyone. But April will not give up. April is bound and determined to be her friend and to be there for her and let her know that she's not alone. Because while she was being held prisoner, her father died in a drunk driving accident. Her mother died from cancer, and her brother overdosed on drugs. So anyway, she didn't really have anybody except for April and Maddox and Jacqueline. So Maddox comes to let her know that thing one was captured, but he hung himself in jail. And so she goes to tell Jacqueline. Jacqueline just kind of like blows it off. She decides that she's going to, while they're in the hospital, she sees a doctor who was one of the men who abused her. And she decides, you know, I'm gonna kill the doctor. And she tries to get the girls on board, and they're like, dude, like, no, I'm not going back in a cell. And that's what's going to happen if you go down this road. She had made a promise to Mary Lou, one of the women in the cell, that was killed and used in a snuff film once she got too old to be used in the brothel. She had promised her that she would, you know, go to her daughter and let her know, you know, that Mary Lou loved her, cared about her. So now that she's decided that she's going to kill this doctor, she wants to go ahead and fulfill her promise to Mary Lou so that kind of all the strings are cut and she can handle business. So when she goes to visit Mary Lou's daughter, she goes with Maddox because she doesn't know how to drive because she's been held in captivity all this time. So Maddox takes her. She was going to take the bus, and Maddox is like, no, I'm driving you. And Mary Lou's mother, who apparently has been raising her daughter as her own, just like goes off. Is like, you know, what are you doing here? Don't come near my daughter, blah, blah, blah. and Orion kind of goes off on her. And so anyway, they end up leaving. Maddox takes her to dinner. It's like the first time she's been out to a restaurant in public. You know, she's been ordering everything online once somebody showed her how to use the internet, which I think was April and Shelby. And, but she kind of, there's part of her that wants to have this experience with Maddox to be able to go and have a normal night and see what life would have been like if they had been able to go out on a date. And so they go to the restaurant, and she does okay through the restaurant, but when he takes her home, she kind of goes off on him and tries to push him away, but he's not having it. He's like, I'm going to walk you to your door. Like, there's no, you can be mad if you want to. And so she goes to check on Jacqueline because it's been a few days since she talks to her, and she finds Jacqueline dead in her apartment from an overdose. So she's trying to plan Jacqueline's funeral because Jacqueline doesn't have anybody either. And April and her mother kind of help Orion and plan the funeral. And while she's at the funeral, Shelby comes up and talks to her, and Shelby's actually doing better. It's so weird because when they were in the captivity, they knew Shelby's going to be the next one to die because she just could not deal. Like, she just cried all the time and she couldn't deal. But Jacqueline and Orion were the strong ones. But then when they got out, Shelby's the one actually going to therapy and actually making things work and turning her life around. And she's writing a book to kind of deal with the trauma. And Jacqueline and Orion are the ones having the trouble on the outside. But when Jacqueline dies, it kind of pulls the trigger on Orion, and she decides, like, that's it, I'm killing the doctor. So she stalks him, she follows him, and she has an opportunity, and so she kills him in a very violent way. And then she decides to buy a kill farm in the middle of nowhere and start killing people from the sex offender registry. Yeah, old girl. She feels like everything has been taken from her and there's nothing left human in her. And she feels like the monsters have turned her into a monster, or like she had to turn into a monster to survive the monsters. And so she likes to hunt other monsters. And so she's been killing people on the sex offender registry. And Maddox figures it out because he's a cop, a good cop. And he confronts her, somehow agrees to, like, help cover her tracks, and they kiss, and that's the end. So yeah, so it's definitely a different kind of story. Not my usual, but when I saw somebody had posted on Facebook, like, oh, BT Urruela's got a new book, and it's with his fiance, and y'all, they're so cute. They're really so cute. I haven't read any of Ann Malcom's stuff, but she's a writer too. He's a writer. So, you know, I would definitely say check it out, especially if you like thrillers or you like dark stories. All right. Well, thanks. Next time.